Alright, so, like you saw in the last video, we made this moon shuttle board work again. It was a very simple issue that I overlooked in the very beginning, and thankfully, I figured it out before I went and ordered parts I didn't really need for it, so that's awesome. But, as you can tell, this board is super dirty. I mean, look at that, that's gross. So, we're going to go ahead and clean it, but we're going to do a little bit something different. As you already know, I've made a video on how to clean a PCB already. But I was using Simple Green. And I was just informed, probably a few weeks back or whatnot, that there's a better cleaning solution that can be used, and that's Fantastik. So what I figured we'd do, since this board has two circuit boards actually in the stack, we'll clean one of them with my normal Simple Green, and we'll clean the other one with Fantastik. And we'll see if there's an actual difference between the two. Because I will admit, the Simple Green, when the board's dried, leaves a little bit of a residue that you kind of got to wipe up with some rubbing alcohol. And I was told that Fantastik won't leave a residue. So, why not try out on both boards and see which one is better? Who knows, they might both be the same, there's no real difference. So, let's do that. And like any other board, when you clean them out, you want to make sure to take all your socketed chips out. Okay? So you make sure you get those sockets nice and clean and everything else. Of course, we're going to want to take this out. This is the CPU for Moon Shuttle. And this just pops right off. You know, give it a little wiggle back and forth, and there we go. It's off there. Simple. I've already marked each ROM, so I know where it goes back on the board itself. And just to give you an example about how to take one of these ROMs off if you don't have one of those chip removing tools, which is basically like a little, kind of like a clamp, you know, a spring-loaded clamp that's got two little pins that hold on to each end of the IC, and you rock it back and forth and pop it off. I don't have one of those, and most people won't, but you can use just a typical flat blade screwdriver. So I'm going to zoom you in a little here, just to give you a better view. And what I like to do is I'll take my flat blade, and sometimes I use a thinner or not as wide of a flat blade. It just depends on how much of a gap you have below your ICs. But when I get underneath the edge here, okay, what I'm going to do is, just so you can see it better, I'm going to turn the screwdriver this way, go back flat, and turn it this way. But as I do it, I'm going to move from side to side. So I'll come over to the one side, it doesn't matter which side you start on, and I'm going to pop it up a little. Then move over, pop it up a little, and then push the screwdriver in, and keep doing that back and forth until I get to the very end, and I can just gently wiggle and pop the IC out. Kind of like this, okay? So I get under the chip, I go over to the left, and I give it a little pop. And then I'll come over to the right, and I'll do the same. And I just keep on moving down. Sometimes one side's going to pop up more than the other, and that happens. Then stay to the side that's not popped up as much. Otherwise, you may bend your pins, or the legs on the IC. And it's not a big deal, you can straighten them out, but it's just less hassle for you in the future. But as you can see, the chip popped out, and I can just take it right out. And we did not bend the legs. Everything's in good condition. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead, and I'm going to remove all the rest of the ROMs and the chips, and on both boards. And then we'll get you guys set up so we can start cleaning this stuff, okay? So we'll be right back, and we'll see you real soon. Okay, now as you can see, I got all the ROMs and socketed ICs removed from these boards. And what we're going to do is, like I said, we're going to test out the two different types of cleaners that I use. On the left-hand side, we have our CPU board, or our main ROM board, and we're going to use our Simple Green on that, okay? Now, on the right hand side, we have our video board. And we're going to use the Fantastik on that. They're both the same procedure. We're going to spray it down. Nice and good, okay? You want to get it nice and coated all the way through. And then we're going to take our brush and we're going to lightly scrub it up. And I want to be careful because whoever had the board before added jumper wires. I don't know if it was them who did it or if it came factory this way. Could not find any information on that. So when we come close to those jumper wires, we're just going to want to be careful and make sure that we don't break them off. I mean, in the big picture, it's not a big deal. We could always just reattach them. It's just extra work that we can try to avoid by not being so aggressive. You don't really want to be aggressive anyway. Just get it nice and scrubbed down, all sudsy and stuff. And then we'll rinse it off when we're done under water. Okay, so that board's been scrubbed up. Now we're going to do this board with the Fantastik, and it's the same procedure. We're going to go ahead and spray it down. Make sure we get it real good. Okay, and now we'll scrub it. We want to try and get inside these sockets too. Now that one got a little more sudsier than this one did. Alright, there we go. Just gotta get the suds working. Okay, now that we've got the component side done, we'll go ahead and we'll flip them around and do the other side. This one I'm going to flip over so I can get the sockets a little bit better. We're going to spray them down again. And with the same thing, we're going to scrub it up. Since we're not on the component side, we're on the solder side, you can be slightly more aggressive, but you still want to be careful because you don't want to damage any traces. And of course, I'm going to get these sockets real quick too for our ribbon cables. We want to really make sure those bad boys are clean. Okay, and then we'll get this one squirted up. And get it scrubbed. I'm sorry if the lighting is kind of poor. So I can tell you right now that Fantastik gets a lot more sudsier, that's for sure. So that might be like one of the key things to make it better. But we'll find out. Get these sockets again, really make sure I get in there real good. Now I want to really make sure the ribbon cable sockets get nice and clean as well. Okay, so we have just scrubbed up the boards. Now the next step is I'm going to take them inside and I'm going to rinse them off. And I'm just going to use regular old tap water from the sink, okay? You've seen it in my original video on how to clean a circuit board, so I'm not going to film it again. It's literally just rinse it off with water. Then after that's done, you want to have them air dry for at least 24 to 48 hours. You could also put them in an oven at really low temp, anywhere about 120 to 140 degrees Fahrenheit, and bake it dry. I don't like to do that because with my terrible luck, I'll probably end up causing problems with the board. So I just let them air dry. Just gotta be patient, give them a day or two, and they'll be fine. One way you can accelerate the drying with the air drying is set them in front of like a space heater, and that'll help dry them off just a little bit quicker. Just make sure to remember every couple of hours or so, rotate the boards so that they're evenly getting heat to dry out. So I'm going to go ahead and rinse these off, and I'll show you after I rinse them off what they look like. And then we're going to let them dry for a day or two, and we'll come back and we'll see which product is better. So, be right back, guys. Okay, I just got done rinsing these boards off. As you can see, they're pretty clean. Now, don't let this fool you, because again, it was just rinsed off, so they're wet right now. And being wet, they're going to obviously look extremely clean. But the whole point of this experiment is to see if there's any leftover residue from using either one of the cleaning chemicals. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to set them up. Well, I'm going to prop them up in front of my space heater. And I'm going to prop them up in a way so there's airflow going underneath the board as well as on top of the board, so that hopefully they'll dry a lot quicker, maybe within 24 hours versus 48 hours. And then we're going to find out and see if we get a residue that's left behind, like a hazy fog on the board. And we'll kind of go from there. So I'll see you guys in a day or two and find out what happens. Okay, so now the boards have finally dried completely. I can tell you right now that I can't find a difference between Simple Green and Fantastik. They both leave a residue that has to be cleaned up with rubbing alcohol, basically. It's going to be kind of hard to see on the camera, but I'm going to do my best. But you can kind of see like a little bit of like a film or a residue that's left on this board. It's more noticeable in between each of the IC chips and stuff, especially the ROM sockets, because I scrub between all those. And then we look at the board that had Fantastik. It's about the same, really. Like, there's residue. It might be a little lighter than the Simple Green, but in all reality, it's about the same, in my opinion. So, you know, at this point, I would say use whichever one is in your budget. Fantastik is a little bit cheaper than Simple Green, so I guess that's where you can kind of say it's better. It's cheaper. But at this point, I just gotta take my toothbrush with some rubbing alcohol and just kind of go through the board and clean up that residue. That's what I gotta do at this point. Just like I do with Simple Green. So, for me, I'm gonna personally stick with Simple Green just because, I don't know, I use it for a lot of stuff. More things than just cleaning circuit boards and such. So, whatever you guys want to do, it's going to work just fine. You just got to remember you're going to have a little bit of residue. You're going to have to use a little rubbing alcohol to kind of clean up with. And that's about it, really. So I'm going to go through and finish cleaning with the rubbing alcohol like you're seeing me do right now. And once I'm done with that, we'll put the IC chips and all that stuff back in their sockets. And we'll make sure that the board is still working just fine, because we already know that we got it working. So, in all reality, cleaning the board right here shouldn't have caused any problems, and it should work just as good as it did before. With that being said, I'll get this done, and we'll be right back, guys, okay? Okay. So, ran the rubbing alcohol over everything. It's all dried up. The boards actually look fairly good again. Nice and shiny and clean. That's the way they should be, you know? So, I went through and I put all the ROMs and IC chips that are socketed back into place. So we can go ahead and start putting these boards actually back together. And of course you want to remember, make your ribbon cable connectors face the same way, and so on and so forth. That's pretty common sense at this point. I mean, you should be able to understand that. Then we snap them back into the places here. Make sure our caps are square. And then we're going to put our ribbon connectors back on. Just like so. Flip the board up on its end. It'll make it easier to snap them in. Once we get these bad boys connected, then we'll plug it in, we'll test it out, and see if we caused any additional problems from our cleaning. Because the thing is, like, even if you know that board is working, and you don't go and retest it afterwards, you might have caused issues by accident. Because you could have scrubbed an area a little harder than you thought you did, and then caused a trace to lift up, or if they happen to have jumper cables between certain connections and stuff, you could have caused damage to those jumper cables and stuff like that, and you don't want that. So it's always best to make sure to double check your work and really make sure that everything is connected the way it's supposed to be. Because the worst thing to do is take a board like this, go through the cleaning, then you go to sell it as a working board, and it doesn't work because you made a boo-boo that you didn't recognize right away. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to connect the edge connector and our video outputs, and we're going to make sure the thing is still working. And if it is, good job, we're done. This board is 100% working. And like I mentioned in a previous video when we actually repaired it, I do not know if I'm going to actually sell this. I may just add it to my collection of rare boards and just hang on to it till I either find a cabinet, like an actual dedicated cabinet for this game, or just build a cabinet so I can play it. And who knows, I may even decide in the farther future to go like, you know what, I want some extra cash and I'm going to sell it. Because this board is a little rare. I mean, it's not super rare, but it's rare enough where I've seen them sell for anywhere between $400 and $500 for a working board. So that's pretty good in my opinion, especially since I spent $80 for this board shipped. And the only amount of money I spent on the repair is my own personal time. There was no parts needed like I originally thought in the first video. So that's pretty cool. But we'll find out. And we'll just see what I do in the future. If I do decide to sell it, I'll make a little video and tell you guys, you know, I decided to sell it, and I'll show you how much I got for it. Just because. Just because it goes for $400 to $500 doesn't mean I'm going to get $400 to $500. You know, like I could have it online for like a year or two, and I only get $200 or $300 for it. It really just depends on what people are willing to spend for the board. So let's get it hooked up and test it at the very least and make sure it still works. So we'll be right back, guys. Okay, everybody. So I've got all the ROMs, the sound CPU, the main CPU, and every other socketed IC that this game needs completely put back in. I got the ribbon cables on, the boards are connected, so let's go ahead and power it up and see if everything's still working just fine. Sorry for the light right there. I need it on in order for us to see everything going on in the board itself. Which actually, I just noticed I didn't even power the monitor up, so I gotta push that on. Okay, let's see what's going on here. Well, so far it seems to be working just fine. Let's go through the demo mode here, see how it does. Okay, that's looking good so far. So why don't we clean it up and just make sure all the sounds and such are working. So, let's go ahead and do that real quick. Okay, so everything seems to be working just fine. Basically, like I mentioned before, I didn't really see much of a difference between using Simple Green and Fantastik when it comes to cleaning out your PCBs. So use either one. They both create a little bit of an after residue when it dries. So regardless, you're going to go ahead and have to use a little bit of isopropyl alcohol and clean up that residue. I mean, the board looks pretty clean. It's in good shape. I still have to replace this capacitor, so I apologize I haven't done that on video. I'll do that before I decide to sell it, but as it stands, I don't think I'm going to sell this board. I'm just going to add it to my collection because from the research I've done, it apparently seems this board might be slightly rare. Whether that's true or not, I really don't know, but I mean, there are people online selling this thing for quite a bit of money, honestly, and they all claim to be rare, and I don't see the board even online for sale that often. Like, right now, you might find 2 for sale. So, I mean, again, I don't know. If you guys know for sure, let me know. Otherwise, I'm just going to add it to my collection until it comes a time where I need some extra cash. And who knows, maybe we'll build a cabinet for it just so we can play it and have some fun. But the board works. The only thing I want to say besides who cares which cleaner you use at this point, or make a comment in the section down below to say what cleaner you prefer to use, is when you go to scrub it out with your cleaner, be very gentle with your brush, because if you're a little too aggressive, you may cause damage to an IC trace or any kind of trace, or some kind of a solder pad issue. So just be careful when you scrub it. That's what I have to say. Gentle scrubbing, rinse it out, and be patient. If you're not going to use like a PCB oven that has lower temperatures and stuff to dry it out, be patient. Give it 2 or 3 days to fully dry out, because if you don't, you're going to have problems. If there's any moisture on this board and you power it up, it's going to fry on you. And who knows what fries? It could be the whole thing. Or it could be something that's almost impossible to replace, like this CPU pack. I cannot find that CPU pack anywhere online. So, just be careful. Other than that, use Simple Green, Fantastik, or whatever you want. It all does the same at this point. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you on the next video. Take care.